deprivation of liberty is a situation that affects thousands of children in many different contexts. Within the criminal justice system, we have so many kids who are deprived of liberty in police detention centers, in prisons. In the context of migration, unfortunately, we see so many situations of children who also for their own protection are placed in areas where they are locked out, very often with adults that they don't know, or facing risks of violence and others. In so many contexts, this is happening. So for that reason, it was felt that in the light of the important international legal framework, it would be very valuable for the United Nations to have a study, a global study, that could identify the situations within which children face the risk of deprivation of liberty, which kind of institutions exist, and what are the standards that have been put in place to safeguard the rights of the child. What are the alternatives, the options to prevent the deprivation of liberty of children? And once children have been detained in whatever context or for how long it may be, that there is a plan for a long-term vision of what is necessary for them to be confident, active, and responsible members of society. It is true that there are many studies, but they have been very fragmented. And in many countries, we see that there is a need for better evidence to help states adopt the best policies, the best laws to ensure that children are protected at all moments and deprivation of liberty is not a risk that they may face during their lives and their childhood. Naturally, the global study will be building upon existing international standards. The Convention on the Rights of the Child, the Covenants on Civil and Political Rights, Economic, Social, Cultural Rights, the Convention on the Rights of Migrant Workers and Members of their Families, so many important instruments, also at the regional level. But we know that between standards and implementation and reality, there is a big gap. And the study will provide a very important opportunity to document positive practices and promising initiatives that help to ensure that children are not facing deprivation of liberty. If they do, their rights are safeguarded to the maximum extent possible, and that this is not compromising their development and their contribution to society. Now, from the very start, the General Assembly of the United Nations, when asking for the commission of a global study, required the United Nations system to be very active in supporting this process. And for that reason, it did identify key agencies within the system, from UNICEF to the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the High Commissioner for Refugees, UNODC dealing with drugs and crime, and also the two special representatives of the Secretary General on Children and Armed Conflict and on Violence Against Children, to join hands in ensuring that this study would take into consideration the experience of the United Nations, but could also, once finalized, be mainstreamed in the jurisdiction, in the mandates of the different actors of the United Nations system. So from the very start, there was the establishment of a United Nations task force on children deprived of liberty that I have been very honored to chair, so that we could support the preparation of the ground for the development of the study by reflecting on the scope of the study, by identifying key experts which could bring their experience and expertise to enrich the study and to make it credible and evidence-based. Also to identify which research institutions were engaged in areas covered by the study, from health to migration situations and asylum seeking and refugee context, or criminal justice or others, so that we would have the best possible information to inform the study, but at the same time, these institutions could, once the study finalized, address knowledge gaps that the study may identify. We have now come to a very important stage of development of the study where important research contributions have been brought to the table, and we are reviewing those contributions with a view to integrate them in the final version of the global study that will be presented to the General Assembly of the United Nations so that it can then be informing better laws, better policies, better data collection, and also give states examples of how to ensure the translation into practice of the important international legal framework agreed upon by the international community. One of the areas the global study had from the beginning identified as a big gap is data on the numbers of children who are deprived of liberty, in which conditions and on which grounds, in which institutions, benefiting from which safeguards, including safeguards to challenge deprivation of liberty, safeguards to challenge situations of violence, abuse and exploitation they may suffer, or the neglect of their rights overall. The global study is creating an opportunity to gather available data, and at the same time is recognizing that unfortunately still today there are many areas where data is not yet available, and so one of the recommendations of the study no doubt is going to address this topic, and we are very confident will bring a new impetus for international efforts to gather better data, wider data, to leave no child forgotten, and at the same time to document, to provide better evidence on things that can work to prevent deprivation of liberty, to ensure the safeguard of the rights of children, and to ensure their recovery and reintegration. The UN task force, when it was established, was given three fundamental mandates. The first was to clarify the scope of the study, and as I said, to identify the most important experts around the world, research institutions and actors who could be providing the best possible support to the development of the study, including at the national level, for instance, independent national human rights institutions that deal with the rights of the child, who very often have the mandate of visiting places of detention of children and making the best interests of the child and the voices of the child better heard and respected. The second important task given was to identify an independent expert who could lead the development of the study and who could bring along all those who could make this study an important piece of research, but also a source for policy making and policy reforms. We are very pleased to see that Professor Manfred Novak, who is well known for his work in so many areas relating to the deprivation of liberty, including the protection of children from torture, inhuman and degrading treatment, has accepted to lead the development of the study. And the third important function that was anticipated to the task force was to prepare the ground for the follow-up and implementation of the recommendations of the UN study. And I feel very pleased that this is a reality, because we cannot end once the study is submitted to the General Assembly, it is endorsed by the international community, because the real difference of a piece of research is when it becomes a policy agenda at the national level, and when the important recommendations that are going to be put forward will be a source of inspiration and a reference for national governments to reflect on what they have, what they miss, and what is the best way of ensuring that all children are protected. Deprivation of liberty is not a solution, and we find the best ways of preventing the recourse to situations of deprivation of liberty. So no doubt from all of us within the United Nations system, there is a very strong commitment to continue to play our role in support of the implementation, in collaboration across the UN system, with human rights mechanisms, with the treaty bodies, including the Committee on the Rights of the Child, with special procedures, very especially the special rapporteurs with a very important role to play in the implementation phase, but also with member states, with national institutions, and let us not forget, with children themselves. I think it is very telling that the General Assembly, when it called for the study, it encouraged the study to be developed, taking into account the voices and experiences of young people. Young people deprived of liberty, and young people who have a view about what it means to be in detention for a young person. And we feel very encouraged by the fact that a number of initiatives have been promoted in different parts of the world, including by ourselves within Latin America, to understand how children from parents who are deprived of liberty or children who are in detention, how they see that reality, how they suffer stigmatization, marginalization, social exclusion, and what are the recommendations they put forward to help countries to do better in preventing and addressing this reality. And interestingly, from all those that have been listened to, there are two common messages that we receive. One, it's fundamental to invest in a strong education system of quality that gives the best abilities for children to feel empowered, confident, and able to prevent violations of their rights and contribute to a life that is relevant for them in the present and in the future. And secondly, that there is no risk of violence, abuse, or exploitation. And I'm confident that the study will be also reflecting these recommendations of children and will be a very powerful reference for member states to improve their policies, their laws, their institutions, their data and evidence to have a life where deprivation of liberty is part of a very distant history. Thank you.